Introduce Alex Barinka. She's from Bloomberg News, and she will be the MC for the rest of the day and the moderator for the next panel.
Thank
Round of applause for Bloomberg.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, by way of introduction, I'm Alex Brink. I'm on our deals team at Bloomberg. I am based now in San Francisco, our first ever deals reporter west of the Mississippi. Basically, it's my job to break the stuff that all of the gentlemen on the last panel were working on. If any tech company buys someone, if anyone goes public in the US, hopefully I'm on top of it. And also writing the smartest stories on where the money is moving in Silicon Valley and in the tech community. So I am very excited to introduce this next panel that will focus on entertainment. As you see, my focus is kind of on tech, but the thing that keeps me up at night as a deals reporter is when tech and media combine. I'm sure you can imagine the possible combinations. Gene spoke earlier about how Pixar revolutionized Disney. Well, today, Netflix, as a good Bloomberg reporter, I know that Netflix surpassed Disney's market cap for the first time at $152 billion. So just to put in perspective here, some of the convergence, I think if you ask anyone in this room, is Netflix an entertainment company or are they a tech company? I feel like we would have answers on both sides. So this next group is a bunch of folks in the entertainment industry, which I think is very interesting because when I think about the buzzwords that I hear these days, VR, AR, bringing tech into the home, these are things that are top of mind for folks in the circles that I run in. And entertainment is very interesting because the actual medium is something that consumers are used to. And as you all, I hear there's a lot of investors in the room, know that changing consumer behavior is really hard. But if consumers are already used to storytelling, then perhaps they can open their mind to some of these interesting technologies. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our four panelists here briefly. They're going to go over a quick 5-minute intro to give you a little bit more color on what you do. It is not all-encompassing. 5 minutes is a short amount of time, but I promised them I would cut them off after 5 minutes so we can get to talking. So first, I want to bring up Thomas Golecki. He's Chief Digital Officer and Executive Vice President of Strategy and Business Development at Warner Brothers. He's responsible for driving the studio's worldwide digital growth. That includes M&A and investments. Good to meet you. And leading its worldwide technology efforts. Next, I want to bring up Marcy Jastro. She's Senior Vice President of Immersive Media at Technicolor and Head of Technicolor's Experience Center. She's dedicated to bringing artists, technologists, and partners together to build the future of immersive media. She's focused on AR, VR, and beyond, and sits on several boards, including the Interactive Emmys, Periscope, and BAFTA. We also have Thomas Vu. He's head of creative development at Riot Games. You might know some of the games he's designed and produced, some of the beloved names like The Sims, SimCity, and obviously the big hit League of Legends. He and his team are developing deep engrossing characters and universes, and I know he's thinking about how to deliver those to customers in different ways these days. And last but obviously not least, we have Vicki Dobbs-Beck. She's executive in charge of ILMX Labs at Lucasfilms, a Walt Disney company. The division combines the storytelling and innovation of Lucasfilms, ILM, and Skywalker Sound and builds a foundation of pioneering R&D in real-time computer graphics and virtual production. It's a new division launched just in June 2015. So I'm going to hand it on over to you to start the 5 minutes here, and you can tell us a little bit more about Warner Brothers.
Great, sure. I'll stand up for a second. So I wanted just sort of to mention that when we think about the intersection of entertainment and technology, we do it from a very specific vantage point, and that is as a really large media company. We've been in business for 100 years. We're the largest producers of film and television and games in the world. We're actually the only company that operates at global scale in those three segments. And when we look out the marketplace, we see a very robust growth profile. If you look at sort of the consumption of filmed entertainment, of video entertainment across all platforms, is at an absolute all-time high. If you look at the movie business, 6 of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time have been released in the last 3 years. If you look at the television business, there are twice as many high-end series on air today across streaming and linear platforms as there were 8 or 9 years ago. And the video game business, a great video game can generate more revenue than the largest movie and can reach more people a day than a broadcast television network. And so it's a very, very robust marketplace from our standpoint. At the same time, for reasons that are absolutely obvious to every consumer and everyone in this room, every aspect of how we make, and market and distribute our content is being massively disrupted all the time on a continuous basis at an accelerating pace by technology change, by waves of technology change that are largely giving consumers more flexibility, more choice, fundamentally more capabilities, and it's changing every aspect of our business. And that's why, even though the heartbeat of our company is and always will be content and story and narrative and character, increasingly, almost everything we do is driven by technology and by trying to understand how we can assess and react to technology change. And just to give a few examples of that, because every aspect of our production process and every aspect of our supply chain is almost entirely digital, and because we have a global game business with thousands of engineers working in 9 studios around the world, in addition to being a large entertainment company, we are a really large software company, and we have huge investments in infrastructure and development, and that's accelerating all the time. And even though for most of our history, we were a company that every year reached billions of people, literally around the world, with our content through movie theaters and television networks, and had no information at all about any of those customers, and every year invested an enormous amount of money to buy those customers again. Today, we operate in a marketplace where the entire central focus of how we think about distribution in the future is all about direct-to-consumer. And so we are a large investment in direct-to-consumer platforms. We're building over-the-top streaming networks on everything that goes with it. We're operating massive mobile games at scale and doing all of the things you need to do to kind of operate in that business, including all of the machine learning around the user acquisition funnels and everything else. And so we are in the technology business in a way that we never expected to be before. And we're continuously focused on how new and emerging technologies are going to affect our business. And 3 that we're spending a lot of time on in particular, one is VR and AR. And these are technologies that we are absolutely convinced are going to be transformative in the future. We are convinced of their ability to generate highly immersive, visceral, emotionally demanding experiences of consumers, and we think that they allow a tremendous expansion of creativity and flexibility when it comes to designing what an entertainment experience is. And at the same time, they present us with a dramatic new challenge, which is how to effectively engage in workable narrative storytelling in a medium where we are outside of the traditional linear frame. And that creative conundrum is at the core of how we think about AR, VR. We're also really focused on the applications of machine learning and artificial intelligence at every aspect of our business. And it's driving innovation and change everywhere, from how we automate and run our back office to making our marketing more efficient in our game business, to things like how we generate facial expressions and make them more realistic. And then when we think about the future, think about a world of social robots and virtual assistants. We're spending a lot of time thinking about what that means for the definition and formation of character and persona on platforms like that. And then finally, we are fascinated by the intersection between wearable computing, technologies like wearable computing and Internet of Things, smart cities and smart retail, and the intense interest that fans of our biggest franchises have in living in the creative universes that they most love. If you imagine that you can don the cloak and wave the wand, and in a connected world full of sensors, something actually happens. And that's a world that is entirely possible in the future. It creates an entirely new kind of entertainment experience. And it's a great example of how we're trying to think about how what we have done for 100 years will be transformed in the future by technology.
Thank you. Marcy?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Marcy Jastrow. I'm SVP of Immersive Media for Technicolor and the head of the Technicolor Experience Center. I imagine most of you have heard or seen the name Technicolor, but I'm sure most of you don't even know what it is that we do. We have been in business for 100 years, and we do everything from content creation to visual effects to advertising and marketing to research and science, all the way to delivery into the home. About 7 years ago, we used to also create film and distribute those films into theaters. But 7 years ago, we had a disruption in our business, and we became a fully digital company, closing all of our labs and becoming one of the largest visual effects providers in the world. Through many different acquisitions, we were a siloed company, and we had to figure out how to bring everybody together to start looking at what we were going to innovate on for the next 100 years. Immersive media AR, VR, MR, all those Rs, blockchain, AI, all of those buzzwords you hear today are exactly what the Technicolor Experience Center does. But instead of me standing here and telling you about it, why don't I roll a video and you can see what I'm talking about. The Technicolor Experience Center is the hub of immersive media for the brands of Technicolor. In addition to that, it is home for our Connected Home group, as well as our research and innovators.
The tech is an important place because it allows our business units to escape the pressure of production and come together in a neutral fashion to collaborate on ways of pushing things along. It lets us bring new technologies in and focus on ways of implementing them or making them better without the burden of having a traditional production deadline.
We're at the Tech today doing a really cool demo with our new virtual production technologies, and it's an exciting day because we've finally got the latest stuff from the MPC virtual production team and the tech team.
Here at the Technicolor virtual production stage, we're shooting with Vicon cameras. So these are 28 of the latest 8-megapixel cameras. So when we pull the trigger, we start capturing 8-megapixel images at 260 frames per second. So we've got quite a lot of angles on a performance, and using that, we can reconstruct a three-dimensional representation of the performance and use that to drive a digital character.
The tech has been amazing as a resource for mocap. We've come in and we've used it not only for the practical business of work, but also for experimentation. It is a way that we can use the technology to move our capabilities forward.
At the Tech, we have what's called an Artists in Residency program. What that means is we have creatives from all over the world come and work in-house with us. This gives us the ability to help their projects flourish while simultaneously learning from them.
We're working really hard technically to preserve that style of the data captured all the way through the pipeline to the final piece.
It is a safe ground for us all to meet and to talk about things that are important in this new area.
So how do you get to this very finely honed workflow that we developed for Wonder Buffalo?
You know, with emerging technology, immersive, VR, AR, there is a sense of community. Tech brings in scanning companies, different headset companies, LED screen companies. You never know what you're going to find when you go in, but it always makes you think and makes you come up with ideas. You get inspired by it because you walk in and you see, oh, there's new things. What can I do with that?
Perfect. Thomas Vu.
Good afternoon, I'm Thomas Vu. I lead creative development at Riot Games. If you guys don't know, Riot Games has been around for about 10 years now, and we make a game called League of Legends. It's one of the most played games in the world, super global. A few years ago, we announced 100 million players played League of Legends monthly, and it's an esports. We have lots of different leagues all around the world, and they all converge every year in these big events, like at the Staples Center in 2013, and it's gotten bigger every single year. We're really proud of this kind of work. I lead a team called Creative Development, and this team really connects traditional entertainment technology and different kinds of art forms together. We make everything from albums to music videos to performances, documentaries, statues, and I wanted to really highlight today two pieces of content that I think really demonstrates a lot of how technology, entertainment, games are all converging in at Riot Games. One is something we called the AR Dragon. And so last year, at the big sporting finals, in Beijing, the team wanted effectively to bring AR into this live event. And we wanted something really ambitious. The dragon is from our game, and we wanted the dragon to come and land inside the stadium. And how do you actually do that? And we thought maybe this is like one of those like really impossible things, because it's a live performance. There's hundreds of people coordinating at the same time. And the dragon needed to come and land inside the stadium in a way that's broadcast and live for roughly 50 million people who was watching live. And so a lot of work was put into it, rigging up the dragon, of course, making sure the cameras work, making sure it's recognizable to our audience. And we did a bunch of tests, and I'll show you one that we did in our parking lot. So here's this dragon flying around and landing near our campus. It's really cool. And then here it is at the performance at Worlds. And this is one of the largest AR live captures ever. And it was really cool because on Chinese Twitter, it was like literally the #1 thing for a few days, and people were losing their minds over how we did this. And it was really cool to see a bunch of teams at Riot come together, the creative teams, the esports team, the performance, all of that coming together. And like I said, something like 50 million people saw this on stream and all around the world. Cool. And what was really cool about the event was that on the 39th Emmy Awards, it was actually it won the Emmy for sports broadcasting and that AR thing. It's really a unique idea of like coming together, and it was like right next to LeBron James and all these other traditional sports. So we were really actually proud of it because esports is becoming a big and nice global thing. The second highlight I wanted to show was a piece that we did internally. It was released 2 months ago called Annie Origins. Annie was one of our first champions that we created for League of Legends. It's a little girl who has essentially a demon teddy bear. And she has a really tragic story. And the creator, Anthony Posbaum, wanted to, he's the director of the piece, he wanted to really envision and bring this idea to life where a painting can come to life. And typically to have every frame look like a painting that comes to life, you have to have hundreds of artists, drawing every single frame. Well, Tony had 10 people for his team, and he really thought about how he can do this by bringing in sort of both technical craft, 3D animation, 2D animation, and he created something that was really powerful. And I want to show a clip of this. As you can imagine, it's a really tragic story. But at Riot Games, we're constantly innovating, thinking about where this technology is going, and really how technology, art, entertainment, games all come together. Sports comes together to bring a lot of value and entertainment to our players. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vicki?
Awesome. So ILM XLab is Lucasfilm's immersive storytelling division. And we're using new technologies like virtual reality, augmented and mixed reality, and even new applications of mobile to tell really powerful and impactful stories. As Alex said, we started about 2.5 years ago. And when we started, we set out to be pioneers in this new space. We were very conscious in our naming. We used the word lab really to acknowledge the fact that we knew we needed to experiment and learn and discover. Our mission is to make it possible for people to step inside the worlds of our stories. And in doing that, we want to help people transition from traditional storytelling to this idea of story living. We have 3 broad areas of focus. The first is location-based immersive adventures, where we can deliver scope and scale and invoke all the senses because we control 100% of the environment. Second, we can deliver story through extended engagement with original immersive episodics. And then finally, we do what we call innovation experiments in order to push the state of the art so that we can continue to improve and evolve. But we believe the future is connected experiences, where there won't be a start and stop, but you'll fluidly flow from one story to the next, from one platform to the next, and from one location to the next. So that's where we're going. I want to highlight 2 experiences that we delivered in 2017. The first is Carne Arena. ILM XLab had the privilege of collaborating with Alejandro Inarritu, Legendary Entertainment, and Fondazione Prada to create Carne Arena, which is an art installation that tells the harrowing quest by immigrants to cross the border from Mexico into the United States. A lot has been written about this experience, but my favorite quote is the one from the Toronto Star, that it's an experience that lasts just 6.5 minutes, but creates a memory that will last a lifetime. And that's what can happen when you design for the strengths of the platform. This is a rare glimpse into the behind-the-scenes making of. It was recently posted on social media. So not only was Carne Arena the first ever special selection of a VR experience at Cannes, but it was also awarded a special Oscar by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the first such award in 19 years, the last going to John Lasseter with Toy Story. The second one is Star Wars Secrets of the Empire. And Star Wars Secrets of the Empire is a hyper-reality experience that we produced in collaboration with The Void. What's special about this and what's slightly different than Carne Arena is that it's a social experience. But in this experience, you not only are in the world, but you're smelling, feeling, touching. And the next is a brief trailer.
Time. You must work together. You must not fail. In disguise, your team's mission is to recover Imperial intelligence critical to our survival.
You're with me. The rest of you, get on that skiff. Do your best to act Imperial.
Looks like you'll have to fight your way out.
What is that?
This could be a threat to our entire existence.
So that's just a little glimpse into what we've been up to, but the important underlying theme for us is that creativity leads and technology enables. Thank you.
And Vicki, I think that's a great jumping off point, and I had the pleasure of talking to these folks beforehand, and you did talk about that. Creativity leads, technology enables. But one thing that I continue to be struck by, maybe Thomas, you're the exception, is you all work for very established companies who've been around for a long time, and we know culture and habits can set in. Vicki, can you talk to what it's been like since 2015, having this new, almost safe space to kind of create these experiences within an organization who is still very focused on the bottom line? How do you balance that need to focus on current innovation with, the pressures of having to produce?
I think that because, Disney is really all about innovating in storytelling and has been throughout its history, as has Lucasfilm. When there were new sort of platforms for expression that came onto the market, I think they agreed that we needed to be there. It hasn't been without its challenges because we are like a startup inside of a very large, mature company. So we spend a lot of time educating and also setting expectations. A little bit earlier, someone was talking about how long it takes these days to IPO. And one of the things that I sort of said early on is, I think that through 2018, so we started in 2015, through 2018, I think our goal is to learn as much as we can and just figure out how to survive during that period. It was going to be hard to monetize. It was going to be hard to know what the business models were. But then in 2019 and 2020, I think that's when the market is going to start to break out, and that we'll be able to undertake more ambitious projects. And then finally in 2020 and beyond, I think that's when you really excel and thrive. So I keep coming back to that theme when I am putting things in context. And the other thing I mentioned to you was, it was a really big deal in 2017 because at the beginning of 2017, we were really promising what was possible. But by the end of 2017, having delivered Carne Arena, Star Wars Secrets of the Empire, and another in-home experience called Droid Repair Bay, I think people started to go, yeah, this is real, and this is something that can deliver a new kind of story.
Marcy, you said 7 years ago, Technicolor disrupted itself.
Yeah.
Again, these folks in the room, I know a lot of them are young companies or they invest in new companies. Are there things that you looked out into the startup ecosystem and said, hey, we need to act like this, we need to think like this, kind of talking points or actual endeavors that you decided to bring in internally?
Well, my whole career was based in boutique companies, so innovating at those companies were much easier, and honestly, it was to stay alive. You had to innovate in order to compete and to be able to work with companies like Warner Brothers or Paramount or Universal, because you have these creatives who come in and require their story to be told in the way that they want it to be told. And it's not just the written script. You have to build a pipeline every single time. So, for example, when I was on Avatar, I had to decide exactly how we were going to build a pipeline to not only just build a movie without any time code, but to QC shots in 3D and push it out to the world, and how are we going to make it day and date.
And how long did that take for Avatar?
It was a 9-month process through the post, it was a much longer time, but the post process was about a 9-month process. But that's what you bring when you come to a large company like Technicolor. So what you have with Technicolor is history and baggage, and you have to manage through that. And you have to start finding the things that make Technicolor different than any other company, and that's scale. It's the ability to scale, because most large studios or most large companies need that scale and need the technologists and the creatives behind you to be able to push out the content. And so that was why I was attracted to Technicolor. But 4 years ago, when we started looking at immersive, it made sense for Technicolor because we'd already built an ecosystem for the studios to take advantage of. That same sort of ecosystem is going to need, and pipeline is going to need to happen for immersive experiences, whether it's out-of-home experiences or in-home experiences. And you need people who have already done it several times over and over.
And Thomas, thinking about your day-to-day, it does seem like a lot of what you all are talking about is content is king, tech is enabling. You did say, though, you're in tech now more than you ever thought you would be. Is the tail wagging the dog at this point? How much urgency are the changes in the technological landscape injecting into the entertainment industry that you have to keep up more so than you would like to keep up?
I think it really goes hand in hand. I mean, it's all pieces. I mean, on the one hand, you have all this technology change that is really disrupting how everything about our business works, and we, of course, have to be where the consumer is, and we spend an enormous amount of time trying to make sure that what we're creating is what consumers want, and we have to be expert at technology. And when you look at things like video games, I mean, if you're in the video game business, you're in the software business. I mean, every aspect of what we do is basically trying to be cutting edge on every platform in every way we can. And we think that's one of our big advantages. At the same time, very much in the way that you just described, you know, our business depends on working with the world's greatest creative talent. The world's greatest creative talent are trying to push the envelope all the time to tell stories in new ways. And so whether it's, you know, Steven Spielberg creating the Oasis in Ready Player One, or the entirely new rig we had to invent when we filmed Gravity to sort of create that orbital appearance, or when we did the Lego Movie, we built a first of its kind entirely new sort of animation model where we modeled every single object in the movie in 3 dimensions, brick by brick. So everything that was shown on screen, if you wanted to, you could assemble it as a Lego toy. And that had never been done before. And we routinely have to invent entirely new categories of technology just to do one movie. And the same is true increasingly in television. Television budgets now for major shows have gotten to the point where they're often adapting some of the same technology challenges that movies do. And as I mentioned, games are the same thing. So I think we're driven in all different ways. We're trying to make product that consumers love. We work with great talent who are always going to be pushing the cutting edge of technology. And then the history of our company, and very much in the way it is with Disney, you know, is about technology innovation from the very beginning. When we started 100 years ago, we were doing, you know, silent black and white movies. And then you had color, and you had sound, and you had special effects, and you had television, and you had the DVD and Blu-ray and 4K and HDR, and it goes on and on. There has hardly been a year when we haven't had to drive our product through some fundamental new innovation. So,
but is it safe to say that that innovation is happening faster now? Do you have to wrangle creatives to get up to speed on the technology? I mean, you've alluded to the fact that gaming moves almost quicker than anything out there. How do you kind of merge the creative process with technology that you might not know what it looks like 6 or 9 months from now when something's going to market?
Yeah, I think it's true, and it's actually caught us off even for a game company that has mostly technologies, right? Like the largest discipline we have at Riot Games are engineers. Like there are more engineers at Riot Games than artists and designers and whatnot. And the technology is moving so quickly. It's moving onto mobile. It's moving on into VR and other places. And it's really about, to me, about vision, about you know where this technology is going. The technology is going to be enabled, but really, like, what are we making and why are we making it? League of Legends is now 7 years. You know, how does that game continue to evolve? And we patch and we update the game every 3 days. You know, like, it's constantly adding on to itself. And in some ways, it's kind of like a Facebook or a Google, right? It's just this. I actually don't know if there's a single person at Riot that has the whole code base in their head at this point. And I think it's a little scary. I would say. I think every one of us, you're kind of holding on. And actually, even, you know, Riot is a very global games company, and when we see actually technologists from China and the mobile industry elevating and moving fast on that front, we look at it actually and see how quickly innovation is happening on that end. It actually, like, puts a lot of interesting pressure on us. But you know, we're kind of on the bleeding edge of entertainment technology. Games has always been this way, and I don't think we want it any other way.
And when you think about that, I mean, all of you, your end products end up marketed to consumers globally, and the point is well taken about the innovation coming out of Asia, especially China. Larry did speak earlier how you do need that local talent when it comes to technologists and that local ecosystem. You both are newer incubators with ILMX Labs and TEC. I mean, how do you foster the technological talent where you all are based that, you know, tends to be kind of hubbed up where I am in San Francisco?
Well, I would say that one of the, it is challenging to recruit and retain the very best talent because there's a huge demand for this kind of expertise. And for people that have actually have created in the interactive space as well as the linear experiences space like film or television, those are the people that everyone's looking for. And quite frankly, they're heavily recruited by technology companies as well as by content companies. One of the things that I think one of the advantages that we have is we have really wonderful IP to work with, and that's something that people can only get if they come to ILM XLab or Lucasfilm, Disney, etc. But we have had people, go interesting paths, like someone just took their expertise and went to work for a driverless car company to do simulations.
Not what I would have thought of as the first career
No,
job.
it's been interesting. So I think one of the things we've had to do is sort of rethink our talent strategy, recognizing that this is going to be an ongoing challenge and that it's probably going to rotate out, especially with the millennial generation. I'm seeing it a lot where every couple years they're interested in making a move regardless of how great the company is, unless they have sort of golden handcuffs on the in the company that they're in. So again, it's just requiring us to rethink our talent strategy.
Marcy, how's your experience been?
So it's interesting because, for many years I was working with talent that was existing talent within the post-production visual effects community. I've found myself in this intersection of game designers and game developers and visual effects supervisors and visual effects artists. So what I'm trying to do is really find that unicorn and that person who can kind of do both or understands both. Pulling from the different brands that we have, the Mill and MPC, some of the best visual effects people out there. But in addition to that, going to universities. So we've become very close with UCLA, USC, most of our talent. My lead developer is a 19-year-old kid that went to USC for one of the gaming programs, decided he didn't want to do it, and became a lead developer within the tech. Because we have an artist in residency program, where we're bringing in really interesting artists from all over the world and building interesting experiences, all of a sudden, Technicolor is creating its own IP. That's a weird place for us to be. So I think it's a great learning ground for them. This summer, we're going to have 5 new interns starting. So we're fortunate that we have this mentorship program that's happening from MPC, from the Mill, really looking at all of the talent and how do we build up this new generation that intersects what a pipeline or visual effects pipeline was before.
And Thomas, you're tasked with looking outside of the company as well for potential investment or M&A opportunities to help complement your kind of core competencies. What are you looking for from a potential M&A candidate, from a potential target, when you're looking to kind of quickly add on to the Warner Brothers repertoire?
Well, it really depends on the area, but what we do is we sort of sit down and look at the areas where we think we have the greatest possibility of growth. And today, that's everything from new franchise IP, which is incredibly rare and valuable in today's world, to the games business, where we've grown a really large games business, but we still think we can be much, much bigger, and we think it's incredibly exciting, to the consumer products business, where we believe that IoT connected toys and devices and merchandise actually will open up an entirely new category of entertainment and interaction in the future. And so we look for companies that have really healthy businesses that we can bring in to our company and complement an operating division. But increasingly, we buy companies for capabilities. And we do that in particular in the technology space, in particular around games, and especially in mobile gaming, where we have made a whole series of acquisitions over the last few years to get engineers, developers, to get teams who are fantastic at acquisition mechanics, who can build new platforms and engines for us. Sometimes because they have standalone games that are fantastic, but other times because they have technology layers that we think we can plug into the overall ecosystem. That's an accelerating area of focus for us. It's really important. And generally speaking, in terms of talent, we end up working all around the world. We have studios and facilities all around the world in games, but also, of course, in visual effects and TV and film production. And we have to tap talent everywhere. We're doing more and more in China, in particular. But we also want to echo this idea that we find that we have some of the most interesting problems for engineers and young scientists to work on. When you think about applications of AI and blockchain and VR, AR to our IP, or even things like, what is the nature of character and personality when it comes to social robot platforms. That's a really interesting engineering and conceptual problem for someone to work on, and that's part of how we attract people as well.
Well, to the first point, if there's any investors or entrepreneurs in the room scribbling down his cheat sheet for potential targets, if any of that happens, hopefully I'm your first call. But you know, your point is well taken on the AR VR point, and the thing that continues to intrigue me is we've seen especially augmented reality, some virtual reality kind of trickle out in the markets. If you're in San Francisco, if you're in Southern California, if you're in New York, you've seen these things. If I talk to my family back home in Dallas, they have no clue what I'm talking about. You all are putting a lot of time and effort into building things that it does seem like outside of the technological echo chamber, folks don't have their eye on yet. How do you think about continuing to bring consumers into the fold through a narrative storytelling process that they're used to, and also kind of have this onus from the rest of the tech community saying, look, you could help us get folks used to these experiences?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we built the center. I mean, most of it is education. It's trying to really show not only consumers, but people who actually can help affect change, what the power of immersive media is. And so we are constantly on the road showing content, high-end image quality, social ability with this content. Our biggest problem right now is the inability to convince people that there actually is an ROI to it. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, you have all these funds going around to build platforms, but if you don't have great content, your platforms aren't going to show anything. And so what we really need, and Vicki and I were talking about this earlier, is people to invest in the content. Mm-hmm. People to actually use these technologies as a way to push the content out to the world. Our biggest hope right now is location-based, because that will socialize the market in putting on a headset and getting used to the idea that they can go into these worlds and step into them in a curated way. And so I would just say that what we need is the headset manufacturers who are going out and spending all this money on this tech, they need to start consumer awareness. Mm-hmm. I was thrilled when Oculus Go came out, and all of a sudden I saw a billboard somewhere in the middle of, USA, nowhere USA, with Oculus Go on it, because we need more awareness. We need consumer marketing. We need to get it out there, because we are having issues with just getting people to watch content in the movies. We need to be able to push the content out there in different ways.
And Vicki, we talked about what you alluded to in your presentation, the different locations. There's the location-based, the go-to location, and then there's the home. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that location-based has really been a bit of a godsend for the VR space, because it was a little unanticipated. We, in 2015, we hadn't actually realized quite the pace at which it was going to take off. But again, because you control 100% of the environment in a location-based setting, you can create a very compelling, very premium quality experience that people can't duplicate in the home. And one of the other thing about it for investors is that people actually understand the business model. You buy a ticket, you go to an experience. If it's a great experience, you might go back, or you tell your friends, etc. And so the Void is actually expanding globally now. So Star Wars Secrets of the Empire is in quite a few locations, and more almost every week. But I do believe that over time, the home market is going to be really important. It's just that people don't necessarily understand what that business model is going to be yet. And also, there's a lot of barriers to entry for a user. To do the high-end quality stuff that probably all of us are doing requires that the headset be connected to a very powerful computer to deliver those high-quality graphics. And the average person is not going to have that computer set up in their home. I don't have it in my home. But as the hardware manufacturers start talking about delivering tetherless devices, where it's all in one, meaning that these are dedicated devices. It's not trying to also be a phone while it's a VR device. So they can really harness all of that power and apply it toward delivering the best possible experience. I think that's potentially going to be a game changer. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited about. But creatively, again, because I was saying we're still in that learn and survive phase, is we're trying to take a very holistic view to our storytelling so that we can tell the best story for the location-based world, and then a more deeper narrative in the home, because you can have that kind of extended engagement if you do it well.
Thomas, games at their core are in the home. The dragon that you showed was a delightful representation of some of this new stuff. Have you put those two together yet?
You know, for us, because we have such a global player base and players all around the world, everywhere from the Philippines to Vietnam, we actually have a bunch of brilliant engineers that have figured out how to take our game, and you can literally run it on the lowest end machines, you know, and I think that's the name of the game. A lot of the VR, AR work is very high end. You know, I do have a $2,000 rig just because I'm a hardcore gamer, but it is. I think that transition is going to happen. It's going to happen slowly. I think tetherless is going to be extremely helpful here, and I have tried the Void, but I do think what Thomas said earlier, which is like IP and intellectual property is so important. You know, it's that thing, like if it wasn't Star Wars, I don't think I would have stepped into the Void to try Star Wars. And I think there's this idea of like knowing really comes before caring. You know, I sort of recognize it, I understand it, and I'll take that leap of faith. And I think VR, AR is sort of a very transformative experience. You know, you go in there and you're not actually sure what it is. You're not like, it's not like a passive experience, and it's not an active experience necessarily, and sometimes it's like kind of like a responsive experience, right? And then Void definitely is an active experience because you're walking through that thing. But I think this is the cutting and bleeding edge of where we're all going, and I know it's going to take hardware to catch up. It's going to take software and IP to catch up, and it's going to take quite a bit of investment. I don't know when it's going to get there, but I do think it's a new category that will change a lot. And I think gaming is going to slowly but surely. I know there was a bunch of game experiences that have already started innovating. You know, I think you guys might know a game called Skyrim. Skyrim is I think maybe a 10-year-old game at this point, and they recently converted to a VR version. And it's huge. Like, people love this game, and it's like a pretty, you know, like an older game, but people want to visit these worlds. And when they're in these worlds, they feel like they're a part of it. It's a new experience. It's a different experience, and I think you'll see more innovations on that front.
Now you already probably have a foot in the door on my next question, because you all are owned by Tencent, which is a big tech company. In my space, when people are dreaming up kind of what could happen in the M&A world, the thing that keeps me up at night is a tech company buying a content company, going the opposite direction. You all are sit-in companies that focus on content. How much do the big tech players keep you up at night when it comes to the immediacy of you know, distributing content or you know, creating their own?
Yeah, I mean, the ecosystem has changed just completely in the past 10, 15 years. I think the success of the large technology companies in becoming massive network effect driven acquirers of audience and driving, you know, monetization mechanics that are brand new and that have incredible scale has changed everything about the media business. You can see that most dramatically in advertising, where, you know, the advertising on digital has surpassed television for several years, and it's concentrated in a small number of companies, and it's a really transformational change. We feel like we're sort of in that business when it comes to mobile games, because, you know, when we talk about the mobile game business, we basically use all the same terminology that you use if you're talking about Facebook or Google or Netflix. So it's a live platform where we have a massive user funnel. We're monetizing in real time. Almost all of our investment is post-game launch. We spend all of our time basically building, you know, machine learning models to figure out how to monetize better and how to acquire with a better LTV. And it looks a lot more like a native tech company than it does like a traditional media business, but it's driven by storytelling, character, narrative, and it leverages our IP in most cases. And so we feel like if games has gone to games as a service, long term we think our whole business goes to entertainment on demand, entertainment as a service, and we're going to be in the business of managing, you know, franchise properties across very, very large audiences in real time, both on the linear screen but also in the real world. And you go back to this, you know, one of the most intense sort of emotion points for consumers is if you are a fan, if you're a Harry Potter fan or a DC Comics fan or a Lego fan, and you believe in that universe, a Star Wars fan, and you want to live in that world. And it's always been hard to do in a perfect way. And technology is beginning to make it possible to really, really live in the world if you want to. And I think that as that becomes more true, we as entertainment companies are going to be programming those experiences in real life, and it's super exciting.
Well, my goal here was to kind of give some flavor, and you know, when you think of Southern California, I think some of the trope, the stereotype is you think of LA and you think of entertainment, and you don't necessarily think of tech. I hope this was illuminating to kind of show you some of the kind of things that are going on at these classically entertainment companies that are very technologically based. So please join me in thanking Thomas, Marcy, Thomas, and Vicky.